driving around and had something that I want to talk to you guys about today, but hopefully it's not scattered. So my dog was attacked by another dog just the other day while we were out for a walk, and I have mixed feelings about what happened. So that's what I kind of wanted to talk to you guys about today. So I was basically just walking my two dogs down the street, and we were probably like 10 houses or so away from our house, and I heard a dog bark, you know, sounded like a regular, you know, deep bark, you know, a large dog, sounded like a large dog. And I stopped based on the sound that the dog was making. I wasn't sure if he was on electric collar or maybe on one of those wire leashes, but I stopped kind of like right a house and a half before, right? And there was a vehicle in the driveway, so I couldn't actually see the other side of the house. And I stopped for about, you know, a good 10-15 seconds. The dog stopped barking. This is the second time. The dog stopped barking, and I proceeded to walk. And then as soon as I passed the vehicle that was blocking my view, I just hear the dog start barking again. And then I see him at his gate, and he's like viciously barking through his gate, and then he just charges through his gate, and the gate opens, and I'm like, oh man, now what's gonna happen? So as soon as he's running, I'm holding my dogs back. Luckily they were more calm. They were fairly calm. All right, hopefully this guy doesn't go. Is he gonna try and go? So the dog is coming, and I yell, stop. And the dog just like stops there. And I'm like, go home. And the dog just is standing there. And then I don't know what, you know, what was the slight trigger, but then he came at my one dog, a Labrador, and he put his, you know, jaws around my dog's neck, and my dog kind of like moved away. So he didn't actually bite my dog, I think. I don't know what, you know, if this was a legal dog bite case, what constitutes the act of biting. Is it the actual motion of pressing down? Is that biting, or is it the act of, you know, putting, you know, your mouth and jaws around something else? So I'm not sure if that's considered a bite or not, but my dog kind of like, and as soon as it happened too, so my dog kind of like, you know, got out of the way of the bite and try so he can retaliate and bite back. But before the other dog, before it even pressed down, I yelled stop, and both that dog and my dog both like stopped in their tracks. I mean, it wasn't like too loud, but I was, you know, it was like a direct command, and they both stopped. So the dog was responding to commands, and I told him to get back, and then he proceeded to actually step backwards, which I thought, like, okay, there's progress. There's probably, you know, nothing really wrong with this guy. And so after that, I'm looking at the dog, and I'm just looking at him, and I see drool coming from his mouth. And if a dog is drooling or, you know, salivating when there's no food, so, you know, he's excited and something else has been triggered for that to happen, another type of reaction that is not food. So that's another sign to, you know, kind of watch out for. And where do I want to go? Is this my best bet? We'll try here. So I saw that, and the whole time I'm yelling at this dog and telling him to stop, go home, stop, go home. And what felt like eternity which was probably only like 30 to 45 seconds, maybe even like a minute. But it wasn't as long as it really lasted. It was probably really quick. I was wondering, where are the owners of this dog, and why aren't they coming to get their dog? I was like, okay, I figure maybe maybe he would just left them outside and they were inside. I sometimes do that with my dogs, but I periodically check on them, especially if they're ever barking. And the type of gate that these guys had that the dog came out of was one of those aluminum fences, and it had one of those mag locks. And apparently it wasn't shut all the way. And we'll get into that part here shortly. So I'm thinking, okay, what's my best set of actions, if the dog's owners aren't home? But I remember seeing the car, which was blocking my view, so I figured they were probably home. They were probably just inside. So how do I get this dog to go back? My main goal was to get the dog to go back in his home. It didn't seem like he was really violent or anything. I'm probably guessing my dogs would do, well, my dogs probably wouldn't bite, but they would go and investigate another dog. Usually anytime my dogs encounter another dog, they always just want to go and play. They're very friendly. So what I did was I took both my dogs. I had one in each hand, and I kind of set them back. And I was in front of them. And I made sure that they stayed back, and I was pulling both my hands back just so that I can be in front. And when I was in front, that would leave it so if anything were to happen, I'd be, in between or whatever. Come on, guy. Why is this other guy going over there? So as I was holding my dogs back, I was actually walking forward towards the dog. I wasn't scared at all during this entire situation, and my dogs were actually both really calm. So I was trying to think of the various scenarios that would transpire next. Okay, so if the dogs lunge again, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to let this dog just kill my dogs? I mean, granted, it would have been 3 versus 1. So I don't know how that would play out. But I don't know if dogs would typically think that way anymore. I mean, they have been domesticated for so long. Do they really still think in, super pack mentality? I mean, for the most part they do, because they count humans in their pack. But I don't know if the dog saw that he was clearly outnumbered, or maybe he thought he can take us, or something like that. I really don't know. But in any case, I was trying to think of all the various outcomes. If I were to engage the dog, then I know my dogs would have followed suit, and they would have went after the dog as well. If I stayed calm and stood my ground, my dogs would have done the same. So I really didn't want to engage the dog unless the dog was going to engage us again. And at that point, I was in front of my dogs, and I would have gone right for him and trying to, protect my family so he doesn't bite my dogs or anything else like that, or hurt them. And he seemed like a dog where he was, very responsive. So I figured standing my ground and just continuing to tell him to go home is probably the best bet, as opposed to trying to aggravate the situation. And then finally, I hear someone calling the dog's name. I can't remember what the dog's name was, but I heard someone calling for him. And he was calling and calling, and the dog wasn't coming, and the human wasn't coming. And I was like, where the heck is this guy? Your dog is there. You can hear me yelling stop and go home, but you're not coming to get your dog. And then finally, out of the corner of my eye, I see him coming out from his backyard. And instead of coming out he's coming out with tools in his hand, yard work tools. So I'm guessing he was tied up. And he was then yelling at, I think, either his wife or maybe his daughter. and saying, hey, you left the gate open, you left the gate open, but he still wasn't coming out. And he was like, the dog's out there. And I don't even remember at this point how the dog got back in. I'm pretty sure they didn't come and get him. I think he eventually, heeded their commands and went inside the gate, and then they closed it. So as soon as I saw the dog turn around, I right away started checking my dog for any puncture wounds or anything. I told them both to sit, and I checked them very well. One of them wasn't even touched, but I checked my dog that was, the act of biting or not biting. And as I was checking, I looked back at the dog, or at the gate and owners, and I'm telling them, hey, we're okay, nothing's wrong. They didn't even ask at all, by the way. They didn't say, hey, did my dog bite you? Hey, what did my dog do? They didn't say anything. And then, from the corner of my eye, I see that the guy is wailing on his dog. Like, I see him like, boom, boom, boom. He's like hammer punching him. And I'm like, what are you doing? I was like, poor dog. And then, I started saying it louder, hey, I didn't say I was watching, but I'm like, hey, we're okay, everything's okay. I was saying that so we could stop hitting the dog, and he just kept going at it. I just made sure that my dogs were okay, and then I proceeded to, go on my walk. And as soon as he closed the gate behind his dog, the dog acted more vicious than when he was outside with my dogs. So it's one of those things okay, is it really the dog's fault? It almost never is. It's usually, the humans training about the dog, or with the dog, or failure to train, should I say. And also that level of aggression in hitting the dog. So I really felt bad for the dog, and as I was walking home, the whole time I was thinking, man, poor dog. Oh, I don't know what died there, but that was a big blood spot. I don't know what that was. So the whole time I was thinking, poor dog, what do I do? I mean, should I go back and ask them? I'll probably head today and go say, hey, does your dog have all the shots? Do they have his rabies shots? I want to make sure that my dogs are, 100% protected. Also, one of the things I think about a lot is, but what would happen to that dog if something actually happened to my dogs, right? So, I would hate to be the cause for another dog to be taken away from their family and then possibly euthanized. Now, granted, it depends on the actions of that dog. Now, let's say that dog killed one of my dogs, then that might be a different story. But I'm not sure if I don't think this dog would have came to that, but it could have come, this could have happened to, anyone walking down the street, and any other dog that may be, vicious or just not good with people or other dogs, and just a dog that's not so social. So I would hate to have, me be the cause of that, because I would hate for that to happen. And a lot of time accidents happen, and that's okay. But repeat offender type things, that's where you really have to worry about it. So, I don't really know. I was pretty calm throughout the situation. I was really disappointed in the owners who failed to, train their dog and failed to get their dog, and then they hit their dog. You never hit your dog. You just don't do that. That's not how raising a kid works, So I felt really bad for the dog more than anything, and he was a beautiful dog. He seemed like a good dog. He listened to my commands for the most part. I mean, it was really hard to break his focus when he was standing there fixated on my dogs, but he eventually, went back and listened. So I mean, there's hope for him, but I don't know if there's hope for his humans. And it's one of those things where I kind of wish I had it on camera. I do have a GoPro mount for my dogs, which I'll probably put on them every single time I walk them now, just in case, you know, mainly for liability's sake. Because what happens if my dog attacked that dog? All we have is the owner's word saying, oh, your two dogs and you were beating on my dog. You know, if this were ever to go to, you know, like some kind of civil suit or some kind of trial, and now what we have is, you know, my word against theirs. And when you have, you know, two dogs and potentially a human, because I don't think I'd ever let my dogs, you know, although I'm not going to let them, well, first, I'm not going to ever leave them and not help protect them if they need it. You know, I don't care what the situation is, I'm going to help my dogs, you know, I'm going to defend them, you know, as you should, or as anyone should. So then it's going to be, you know, a 3-on-1 dog, 3 versus 1 dog situation, and chances are that's not going to hold up in court very well. You know, like, who are you going to believe? The guy with 2 dogs and the guy, you know, beating down a dog, or the guy with the 1 dog? You know, it just doesn't play out. That situation doesn't play out in my head in my favor, or in the favor of the, you know, the multiple dogs versus the 1 dog, even though in this case it was the single dog aggressor. The other situation is, okay, so they can't figure out who did what, and both stories are very valid. Well, then what are they going to do? Well, all 3 dogs will probably get taken and will be euthanized, because that's what they do. They don't normally care, especially the breed of dog. Like, let's say, for example, it's a pit bull. I mean, they don't even ask questions. They're just going to take your family member away from you, and they're going to murder them, which is very unfortunate. I know a lot of states have much stricter and much better laws for both dog ownership and dog protection rights. So you want to go? I'll let this guy go. You want to go? Come on. Come on, you two, buddy. Oh, I didn't realize, but that guy behind me was really close to me. I mean, it's a red light. Where are we going to go? So I wouldn't want that to happen to either situation, and any of the dogs get taken away. I mean, that'd be so heartbreaking over just this accident. So I just kept thinking about this and thinking about this. Like, I don't really know what to do. It's one of my worst fears when I walk my dog. Sometimes my parents like to walk my dog or walk the dogs, and I always tell them, like, hey, don't walk the dogs because, you know, this would happen. And, you know, they're old school, so they always say, that's, you know, that's never happened, so which means it'll never happen to them, because that's just how, you know, they were raised and brought up, which is wrong. And I told them, and I told my mom, I was like, hey, my worst fear just happened while walking the dog, and she knew right away, because I would always tell her, and I would always bring up the situation to her, like, what do you do if a dog comes out of nowhere and starts attacking you guys? So, does this guy beat me? In any case, that's all I really wanted to talk about. Just kind of frustrated at the situation. Probably go today to see if the dog is up to date on all his shots and say, hey, you know, everything's okay. Thanks for asking. You know, that sort of thing. Probably, I don't even know if that's even a good idea, but what would you guys do in that situation? I mean, did I handle it correctly? What could I have done better? I hope I explained everything, you know, how it happened. Next time, hopefully I'll have some GoPro footage. You know, mainly it's the same reason why I have my GoPro footage, you know, for the liability of what actually happened versus my word against theirs. So, that's it for now. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share. Hit the notification bell. Thank you, and have a good day.